are in week 2 of Good to Know, where we're talking about things that are good to know in life. And so, quick question, we're going to do some polls. So I need everybody to stand if you have ever used the technology I'm about to call out, okay? Ready? So if you have ever, bless you, my child, if you have ever used a laptop or a tablet, go ahead and stand. Okay, you all signed in today, hopefully, so that counts. Have you ever used an Xbox? Okay. How about a PlayStation? How about like the OG PlayStation 1, before it was called a 1 because there was no 2? What? A Wii. Super Nintendo, sure. It is the OG. All right. How about, that's everybody, right? Everybody's played some sort of video game. Okay. You have a seat? How about Snapchat? Okay. TikTok. Okay. All right. How about Be Real? Anybody? Okay. Nintendo Switch. Well, we've already covered video games. You can sit down. FaceTime or Skype if you don't have Apple. Is that a face calling app? Then sure. Any face calling telephone app type thing. Okay. How about Roblox? Okay. I'm going to assume you've used some sort of streaming platform like Netflix, Disney, Hulu. Okay. All right. How about Cash App, Venmo, or Apple Pay? Any type of money apps? Okay. This guy has money, everybody. No, I'm just kidding. DoorDash or Uber Eats? Or your parents? Your parents used it? Okay. Or if your parents have ever used it. One of our neighbors use it. Yes. All right. How about Oculus or any kind of VR headset? You guys done this? Like there was those reels that went around for a while of people like walking the plank with the VR headset and like freaking out. Like that's actually really fun. All right. Okay. You guys can sit down. So what we all have learned and understood with that is that technology is common in our day and age. Like we all use technology to a certain extent, sometimes for fun, sometimes for work, sometimes just as like a normal function of life, right? Technology is all around us. We use it all the time. And because of technology, it can make life a lot easier at times, right? The air-controlled house you get to live in is pretty nice, I must say. How many of you have ever been on like a missions trip or something where you went somewhere hot or maybe cold, but there was no air control at the place, so you just had to like survive with no air conditioning? Anybody? Okay. Back when I was a kid and I went to church camp, there was no AC in the dorms. Purdue doesn't have AC? Wow. That's crazy. We went to a CIY campus in Ohio a couple years ago, and they didn't have AC because it was far enough north that they were like, oh, we don't use AC. So, yeah. So, I mean, obviously they're not open during the summer for school, so I guess. But for us that were there over the summer, we greatly wish that they had AC. But while technology can make life a lot easier in certain regards, it can also make life a little bit more complicated with all the different kinds of technology that we've integrated into everyday life. So in this series, we're talking about the truth you need about the stuff that you don't always want to talk about. And so in church, we believe it's the perfect place to talk about everything, including all of the hard things sometimes that are a little bit awkward or maybe uncomfortable to talk about. But as a church, we'd be irresponsible not to talk about all the things that is talked about in every other part of your life. And so in the series, we're talking about the good things that you would need to know. And one of those things is about sex and sexuality. How do you live a life that is honorable to yourself, God, and others in this realm, in a world that is fully integrated with technology? Because as you guys probably know, technology offers a lot of complications in this regard when it comes to this topic and how we view it, how we experience it. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit today. Some of you, I recognize, have probably never been in a situation where you've had to choose sexual integrity. Others of you, maybe you've never even thought about it at all. Others of you, maybe you've had to make choices about how you're going to live with integrity when it comes to this. But because sex is so much more than just about the physical act, we have to talk about how this integrates into technology, because if we're being honest, technology has changed the way we experience it, the way we see it, the way we think about it. And even if you're not actually having sex, you can still have experiences or curiosities with technology when it comes to this topic, right? And so we don't have to look very far to find sexual content online, whether it's the not so appropriate photos that show up on your news feed while you're scrolling Instagram or whatever, or maybe it's the pictures that somebody sent you over text message or Snapchat, or maybe videos that you found on YouTube, or maybe even a new show that you found on Netflix that you didn't know had that one scene that popped up, or maybe it was something that you downloaded on your Kindle, or maybe even just that ad that played on Hulu while you were waiting for the commercial break to end. It's everywhere, and it's exhausting, sometimes frustrating. And how do we manage it? How do we deal with it? How do we live as Christians in a world where this is just everywhere? And it's a real question, and it affects everybody's lives. Sometimes we look online for this kind of stuff intentionally because we're curious, and sometimes we are not looking for it, and it appears in front of us without our consent, right? Meaning, like consent meaning you've agreed to do something or allowed something to happen. And oftentimes with technology, you don't give your consent before something pops in front of your eyes. And so what do we do with that? How do we manage that as Christians in the modern era with technology all around us? One of the biggest ways that sex shows up in our lives in the form of technology is through pornography, which is defined as this. It's any picture or video or written material that shows or describes sex, sexual acts, or naked bodies in a way meant for sexual enjoyment. That's what we're going to define as pornography. And so this is just everywhere. It exposes us to sex in ways that we're probably not prepared for. And it's something that's something we're going to talk a little bit more about next week. But here's the reality. When it comes to technology, when it comes to your screen, when it comes to the way that you interact with people, the way that we engage with this kind of content, there's something about technology that makes us feel like we've got a little bit of a shield, right? Whenever you are interacting with a screen and you get like you interface with other people or with any kind of stuff online, it feels like your screen is kind of like your shield. Like whenever you're talking with somebody online, it's way easier to say whatever it is you have to say to them through text than it is to their face. You got your shield, you got your screen, where you can hide behind it and say all the things that you feel without feeling like the consequences of, if you actually said it in person, affect you. It's like screens shield us from the realities of real life. But that's not true, right? Or the way that we engage with people, like for instance, we would never ask for somebody to send us a picture in person that we know is not appropriate, but when we've got our screen, sometimes it's a little bit easier to do that. Or maybe we send a DM to somebody and say some nasty things to them that we would never say in person, but we got our shield up, we got our screen. Or maybe we just don't think about what we post and the image of ourselves that we're putting out online for everybody else to see. Because for whatever reason, when we're just posing in front of a camera, then it's not real people, it's just a lens. And so we feel like it's a shield. We would maybe post something online that we wouldn't actually do in person. And that can be in regards to anything, right? Not just sexual content, but the reality is when we feel like our screens are shields, it almost like creates this gap in our mind where we don't see the connection between what happens in the digital world and how it affects the real world. But if any of you have had friends that have gotten suspended or sent home or expelled because of something that happened on a screen, you know that what happens in the virtual world absolutely affects real world. So as Christians, how do we manage this? How do we view our screens as a helpful tool rather than a shield to where we dehumanize one another? We don't see each other as actual people with feelings, thoughts, dreams, hopes, futures, hurts. We just see people as a username. And so how do we do this? Here's the reality is 2,000 years ago, when the New Testament was written, they didn't have technology. But believing that God foresees all things, I believe God made sure that what we have in our Bible today gives us everything that we need to know. And while they didn't have the technology that we have today, 2,000 years ago, they absolutely wrestled with the same issues that you and I wrestle with on an everyday basis. It just looks different because of our technology. But at the root of all of that stuff, all the complications of it, is the same issues, the same felt needs, the same struggles that affected people 2,000 years ago are affecting us today. And so that's why we're going to go and that's why we use the Bible. We believe that it's God's word that has been passed down to us. It's his revealed desires for us and how he designed us to live and how we should live out in each part of our lives, including this part. But we're going to read in a letter from Paul, who is one of the most probably influential Christians ever. Most of you know he started the church in many different areas all throughout Asia Minor, traveled around several missionary journeys, planted churches, wrote letters to them. And what we have in our New Testament are a lot of his letters that he sent to these churches, either after starting them and had to leave, or to other people like Timothy that he was mentoring and to start their own churches, or even some churches that maybe he hadn't been to yet. I'd have to look on that to make sure. But what we're going to be in today is one of his letters to the church in Corinth. And so he was writing to the Corinthians, and like I said, they didn't have any of the social media stuff or anything that we have today, but they absolutely dealt with some of the same tensions that we feel today. Corinth was kind of a party city, so it had a lot of stuff going on that you and I would avoid today. Like we would say there's places online you should avoid, right? In order to maintain a healthy relationship with technology and the people in your life. And the same was true back then, except it wasn't just places online you should avoid. It was just places in general, like we have today. But don't go down that street. They're doing some crazy stuff over there. You don't want to be associated with it. You don't want to see what's going on. You don't want to be a part of it. There was stuff going on back then. There were accessible temptations to them back then, just like there are today. And this is what Paul says in 1 Corinthians chapter 6. He says, "Run from sexual sin. No other sin so clearly affects the body as this one does. For sexual immorality is a sin against your own body." So, notice here, he doesn't say run from sex. Because as we talked about last week, sex is good and it's powerful when it's within its designed context that God created it for. So he's not saying run from sex, he's saying run from sexual sin. Okay? And that's a big difference because the way you think about this is really important. But he says run from sexual sin. He seems to be saying that there's a difference between sin that is sexual in nature and every other sin. He says because sexual sin is a sin against your own body. What he's saying is basically there's no other sin that so clearly affects not only your physical body, but sex is more than the physical act. It affects your mental state. It affects your emotions. It affects the state of where you feel like you are with God. And so all of that kind of comes together with the physical act that we call sex. But it's, bless you again, but it's something that Paul is saying this is set apart kind of on a different level than everything else. So he goes, I want you to be extra careful when it comes to this stuff. It's like playing with fire. Will it burn? Yes, it will burn your whole life down if you're not careful. And so he says not to just stroll past it, not just look the other way, but to turn around and run in the opposite direction as fast as you can. Flee from sexual sin, right? He wants us to run. And I think if Paul wrote this today, he might have said something like this: run from posting that sexual picture on your Snapchat story. Run from the message asking for nude photos or videos. Run from pornographic videos that you find online. Run from any corner of the internet where you're going to be tempted to spend time looking at things that are not beneficial to you, to the way you see others, to the way you think about sexuality, and the way that you experience it. So in other words, I think we need to remember technology is good and technology is powerful. It's like, what's that line that Uncle Ben says to Peter Parker? Say it loud for all to hear. With great power comes great responsibility, right? The reality is technology is really good. And it's really powerful. It can do lots of great things. It also has the potential for a lot of bad things. And you don't need me to tell you that. You guys have experienced that in multiple different layers of your life that have nothing to do with this issue, but I'm sure many of you have also experienced that this complicates this issue as well. I don't want you to be confused about anything. I don't want you to look for the wrong places for education. I don't want you to feel shame. If somebody has sent something to you, here's something that's really important. If somebody has sent something to you, whether it's somebody you know or somebody you don't, but it shows up in your notifications, you are not responsible for receiving that because you did not send it, you did not consent to it. You should go talk to a trusted adult. You should talk to your parents when that stuff happens. And while you're not responsible for what gets sent to you, you are accountable for how you respond when stuff does get sent to you. And so having a game plan is probably wise in all areas of life, and especially in this area. So what we do online has the potential to affect our sexual integrity. And just to define this again, because we talked about this a little bit last week, but sexual integrity is kind of the goal of this whole conversation. It's when we choose to respond to the sexual desires that we feel, think about, or experience in a way that honors ourselves, God, and others. That's the goal with sexual integrity. And it's ultimately, bless you again, it is ultimately God's design for sex. That's what sexual integrity is. It's living our lives in such a way that we're in line with the way that God designed for us to experience this topic. And so I want you to remember that when it comes to this topic, because it is complicated, because there's so much out there, stuff that you could not be looking for and it shows up in front of you, or stuff that honestly the temptation to go look for it becomes stronger and stronger the more you indulge. And so with that in mind, I want you to see the importance of not trying to battle this on your own. Because the reality is, if you try to fight something alone, you will fail. If you try to fight something alone, you will fail. The enemy has the most power over you in your life when he convinces you that you must keep secret what God meant to be exposed into the light. Sex is good. It's powerful. And the way we think about it, the way that we engage with this in life should be in full view of God and everybody else. In other words, if we have something that we're trying to hide in our lives when it comes to this topic, the enemy is going to use that to hold it over your head, to hold it against you, to use shame as a weapon, and you won't get any better. You won't grow. You won't be able to heal. You won't be able to move forward. And the only way to disinfect that darkness in your life is to cast light on it. Light is the best disinfectant. And so you have to have somebody that you trust, that you can be open to and honest about this. And preferably an adult. Right? You should be honest with your friends because it's good to have people that hold you accountable, but you should absolutely be honest with your parents. You should be honest with a small group leader. You should be honest with people so that, because this is so common, and you guys probably already know this. This is so common. Why would we think that there's any benefit to hiding it? That we need to be honest. And so I encourage you to not try to fight this alone. So 3 things just to apply to your life when it comes to this topic is, one, if you're trying to live with sexual integrity, how do you avoid temptation? One, ask yourself the question, why? Okay? Why are you about to comment, post, watch, look for, or send that thing? Ask yourself why. Whatever it is you're about to do online, stop and think why you're doing it. If the answer doesn't, here, and this is really important, if the answer doesn't honor yourself, if it doesn't honor others, and if it doesn't honor God, you should probably turn and run the other way. Stop what you're about to do. That's a good rule of thumb. Number 2, ask yourself, is it a secret? Okay? Are there things you're doing, saying, or posting online, things that you wouldn't want posted publicly for everybody to see? Are they things that you wouldn't want me to come up here and show on the screen and be like, hey, everybody, look at this, right? If so, you probably need to stop making that choice, or you probably need to go and seek help. But you need to stop and ask why, and ask yourself, is this a secret? And then take the necessary steps after that. 3, probably the most necessary step is to ask for help. If you're struggling with choosing sexual integrity when it comes to online, you need help. You cannot do it on your own. You got to bring people into your corner to help you out, right? People that will love you and care for you and not judge you, but will help you and give you the tools that you need to succeed in this area. Okay? I don't want this to be like a scare session, okay? Because the reality is, you guys are young. You guys have your whole lives ahead of you. And even if you've made mistakes, that doesn't define you. And that doesn't have to hold you back, right? You can heal, you can rewire your brain, you can move forward, and you can live your life in such a way with sexual integrity that this stuff is only whispers from the past, right? But you're at a crucial point in your life that if you choose not to live with sexual integrity now when it comes to this area, it will haunt you. It will hold you back. It will make things more difficult for you in the future in all kinds of regards. And I don't want that for you. God doesn't want that for you. That's not the way He designed for this all to play out. I want what's best for you. God wants what's best for you. Your small group leaders want what's best for you. Your parents want what's best for you. So ask why, whether or not it's a secret, and ask for help. That would be my encouragement to you. Don't give the enemy power by hiding in the dark. Technology is good, and technology is powerful. So let's rather use this to our benefit. Let's use this to, like, some of the YouTube channels I follow are great Christian channels that have lots of good advice, lots of good ways to think about things on things that are happening in the world today, things that build up my faith. There's the Bible app. You can start a plan where you're reading a verse a day. You're in the Word. You're thinking about it. You can do that with people, so you can do group studies online through the app. Lots of great things that you can do with technology that is good and powerful. So let's use a tool as a tool for our benefit, not as something to our own destruction. And I know you want that, and I know I want that. So as you guys go to your groups, let's think about this question. How might you be using technology in a way that is not good for you? Okay, think about that question. I'll leave that open-ended. How might you be using technology in a way that's not good for you? So I'll pray. You guys will go to your small groups, and then we'll be done for the morning.